This is BBC Radio London. We run a series on BBC Radio London mid-mornings where we find out about the people who run local councils. And it isn't just about their policies on ULEZ or whatever it might be. It's a little bit about them, what made them come into politics, what they hope to achieve, how are they finding it now they are there. It's a question that I'd probably ask the present Prime Minister, Liz Truss. You've always wanted to be Prime Minister. How are you finding it? It could be all sorts of answers, but one imagines it would begin with, I have been clear that it's a unique London borough, one that I'm not even sure, and I argued with our political correspondent about whether we should be doing it or not. I'm not sure that they consider themselves to be a London borough. It's the only one not to be led, by the way, by one of the mainstream political parties. Instead, a group of residents' associations have emerged as a political force in the borough in recent years. In the local elections back in May, after no party won overall control, they pushed the Conservatives out of power with a little help from Labour. The new leader, Ray Morgan, who represents the Havering Residents Association, is the first council leader in Havering in more than 25 years. So it's a quarter of a century not to be from the Conservative or Labour Party. In a minute, I'll be talking to the councillor. But first, here's a bit I really enjoy. And councillor, I advise you to listen, because you will learn something about your borough that perhaps you didn't know before. Because Susana Mendonça has a few facts about Havering.
Havering in north-east London used to be part of the historic county of Essex. It became a London borough in 1965 when Hornchurch and Romford merged. The borough has 7 town centres, including Romford, which has been home to a busy street market since the 13th century. Romford is also the place where the Elizabeth line is controlled. Transport for London's operating centre for the new railway is near Romford Station. The borough has a nature reserve, Rainham Marshes, which covers 1,000 acres. It's one of the few remaining medieval marshes that used to dominate this part of the River Thames. The RSPB says it's only still here because it was closed to the public for more than 100 years for military use. Havering suffered damaging wildfires during the summer heatwave, the worst of which was in the village of Wennington, where residents had to flee as their homes burned down.
Yeah, let me say welcome to Mid-Mornings. Ray, how are you?
Great, thanks, Eddie.
I've been overly familiar already, but
no,
it's
how I like it.
You're an Essex borough. You're not London, really. You people in your part of town don't really consider themselves London, do they?
A lot of people do consider themselves more Essex than they do London. There's a mixture. And it's changing. The borough has changed. I've been in the borough since 1989, and traditionally would have considered itself more Essex than London. But that has changed over the years.
It definitely has. Where I live, there are 2 pillars, and somebody said, do you see on this side of the road and this side of the road? It used to be the beginning of a giant estate in Wanstead. And Wanstead was regarded years and years ago as part of Essex, wasn't it? So it's. I think London is getting bigger and bigger and of everything. Yeah. I have a thought that Luton and Bedford will be part of London one day, just get bigger and bigger. Now, the brewery, I didn't realise the Romford thing. It was quite good. Yeah. We've been there with the children to I think it's something space, kids space. It's a version of hell where my children go and jump around and cause all sorts of It's really, really busy in there, isn't it?
So Romford is obviously the major town in Havering, and it has a variety of different shopping areas. You mentioned the brewery, you've got the mall, you've got the Liberty Centre. It's a bit spread out. That's actually part of the problem we have in Romford, that it's such a large town centre that it's quite spread out, and if you were sitting down today to plan it, you probably wouldn't plan it in the same way as it has been planned over the years.
In my bad old days as a gambler at Romford, I lost a fair few quid. Never going to Romford, the dog track.
I was
myself,
just to say,
but in the bookie. I mean, but greyhound racing, just like Walthamstow, it was a big gig, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It's still there, and it has been redeveloped over the years. It's one of the few left. I think it's actually the only one now left in London.
Let's start with, I'm sorry to start with this, and I am going to get to how it works and all of that, but I'm fascinated by your wide open spaces and some of the problems you've had because of the fires.
Yeah.
How challenging was all of that?
massively challenging. One afternoon we were sitting down, myself and the cabinet, with the chief executive and the rest of his leadership team, and he was saying, "Oh, we've just had some text messages come through to him from the emergency planning team. There's a major fire down in Wellington." And so we said, "Look, let's cut the meeting today. You concentrate on obviously dealing with that." That afternoon I was down in Wellington supporting colleagues, helping people, because obviously 19 people eventually lost their homes, completely destroyed, but obviously a lot of people were displaced at the time because the fires, although not necessarily destroying their homes, their back gardens were completely burnt out. So people had to be transferred over into a local sort of hotel area, and then eventually we moved people to the sports centre in Hornchurch to support them. Some of them stayed there overnight, and then since that time we've obviously continued to support people because they've been homeless.
And we'll continue with that, but because this is a different type of interview, you know, this isn't just about politics. I've got more questions about the fire and whether you rehouse them, but you stop a council meeting and you go down there. When you got there, because that just immediately took me to where we went to Grenfell. So we as a show just got up and we said, let's go down there. But if I'd known perhaps what I was going to see, I might have prepared myself in a different way, because it has a lasting impact. What did you see?
Well, on the day of the fire, obviously we weren't allowed down into the area in question. We were stopped by obviously the fire services because it was felt it was too dangerous to be there, because there were still fires, even though they at one point had them under control. They were still springing up all over the place.
My point is, you are still. I'm moving away from the fires.
Yeah.
I like human beings, and you will have seen people who would have lost their homes, who would have lost their possessions, who would have been absolutely distraught because your home is your castle and all of that. How did that make you feel?
It was an horrendous, and obviously going down there a few days later when we saw the aftermath, it was horrendous. It was like a war zone. You know, we often see pictures on TV of war zones. It was like that. It was horrendous. I've never seen anything in my whole life, and frankly, I don't want to ever see anything like that again. It was terrible.
But sadly, you will. Sadly, you will. You have areas that have had 80 fires in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah. That fire, interestingly enough, was started in a private garden.
It was, I visited.
If my memory serves me rightly. How do you stop that then? Because you have to put something in place.
Well, going forward, I think what we'll probably have to do is obviously create fire breaks, because the main problem here was that the area where it did start was a wide open area of open space. The ground was very, very dry. Because it was open as well, the wind had a tremendous impact in spreading the fire. So when you've got open spaces like that, very dry, windy, it will spread. And in fact, along the Wellington Road, the fire actually spread from one side of the road to the other. It literally jumped, caught the other side, and then took out some houses on the other side as well. It's hard to imagine that kind of thing happening, but it did.
But what about Arnold's Fields? Because that's a repeat offender, isn't it?
Well, Arnold's Fields...
Just describe it for me, sorry.
Arnold's Fields got a very, very long history. It was old waste site, and there's a huge amount of waste underneath the ground.
Is it like dumping ground?
Well, it is a bit of a dumping ground. There's a very long history, and in fact, it's the Environment Agency were involved for quite a long time. Previous owners of the site were prosecuted. In fact, I believe one of the previous owners finished up being sent to prison for different offences, and we don't know entirely what's underneath the ground, but what does seem to constantly be happening is fires
my point is starting. How are you dealing with that?
Well, in fact, last week we had a meeting with a barrister, because obviously, this is a problem that's been going on for probably the best part of 20 years. Something I inherited when I came in as leader, and I pledged to the people for Raynham and Wellington that I will do my absolute best to solve this problem. It won't be quick, it won't be easy, and it actually may take a considerable amount of money that we don't have, but we may have to go with our begging bowl to government to say, can you help us here?
Got lots of questions for you. We're talking to the new leader of Havering, and Mr. Morgon there, as you can hear, Councillor Morgon, well able to answer the questions. I want to find out if those people have been rehoused, but I also want to take calls from people. If you have a concern, a call, a congratulatory message, then certainly we'll also take that. The number 0800 731 2000. Glenn from Hornchurch is on the line for you, Councillor. Morning to you, Glenn.
Good morning, Eddie.
The Councillor, the leader is yours. Please keep your question brief, and I'll try to force him to actually answer the question for you.
All right. Good morning, mate. Just about the easiness of the easiness and the hardness of whether you can stop these fires happening. It's quite easy. It's a risk assessment with the council and the fire brigade, and you risk assess on a hot, dry summer like we've had, and you get the grass cut. It's as simple as that. Anyway, my question is regarding the fear of development in our area. And one of the main areas, I actually live in Chase Cross now, Cllr Road.
Okay, I know that.
So I've lived here for 10 years. Within the first year of moving here, I know you're familiar with Havering Park.
I am.
Yeah, and what a lovely area that is, and how it's used by everybody to walk their dogs and their children. And 9 years ago, they fenced it off and sent everybody a letter saying, we're fencing it off, putting cows on there, these Norfolk red cows that are going to graze the area to keep the cost down so machinery doesn't have to do the job. I
need to push you for the question. I'm so sorry to be rude.
Well, the question is, after 10 years of it being grazing land, now legally it can be built on, and this was known by the council.
A question, please.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of...
But he hasn't asked a question yet, Councillor.
Well,
can you ask a question, please?
The question is, I asked Andrew Rosendale this 9 years ago, is that going to be built on? He said never in a million years.
Right, okay.
So, Havering Park, the meadow, is it going to be built on? Because they fenced it off 9 years ago.
No, we got that bit. We got that bit. Let me get the question on your behalf.
As far as I'm aware, there are no plans to build on it. One of the things that we will be looking at, and one of the things that were key during the election period that we had earlier in the year, was the Residents Association have been against the overdevelopment of Havering for quite some time. As residents will have seen, we've got a huge number of flatted developments all over the borough, particularly in Romford and Rainham. And in my view, that's not, in a sense, developing communities for the future. Now, if you're familiar with Havering, you would have probably have come across the old St George's Hospital site. That's far more the kind of development that I want in Havering, where, yes, there are some flatted developments along there, only 2 and 3 stories high, predominantly houses, lots of green open space there, lots of play equipment for the kids. It's the kind of development
the question essentially is, are you going to do something with the land that the cows have been on for the last 10 years?
I'd have to go away and have a look at that, obviously, to see.
So it's not part of your redevelopment plans?
Yeah, no, it's not part of our redevelopment. One of the things we will be doing is we'll be looking at what they call the local plan. In fact, I was talking to a colleague on Sunday about some of the proposals, more to protect ourselves going forward, because at the moment, if you do not have a local plan that reflects what you want to do in the borough, then developers can come along and basically do what they want to do.
Well, I'm interested in that, seeing as you are residents' associations that have come together. We'll talk housing. We'll talk about your overview of politics in general, because it is a hot topic of debate. I need to go to eat. You need to take me out to a disco, and you need to take me to a museum. It's coming up in a few short minutes. The leader of Havering Council, if you would like to ask a question, make a point, then get in touch. 0800 731 2000. The time is just after 11:30. Let's find out what's happening on those roads.
Thanks, Eddie. The QE2 bridge stays closed with the protesters who've been up there for over 24 hours, obviously. So the M25 is down to 2 lanes in both directions between Essex and Kent. All traffic's using the Dartford Tunnel. Clockwise queue starts a couple of miles before junction 30. There is a breakdown at the back of the queue as well, blocking 2 lanes. And anti-clockwise is slow moving, heading up from junction 3, from just north of junction 3, Swanley. There are delays on the A2. That's still really slow from the Ebbsfleet Northfleet turn towards the M25, and there are queues on the north side of the Dartford crossings around Purfleet and around Lakeside. The A13 still very slow into town from just west of from just before Canning Town actually, and delays at the Blackwall Tunnel northbound from the Woolwich Road flyover, southbound from Old Ford. The North Circular queuing in Arnos Grove with the works of Bowes Road. The M4, that's slow into town still with the ongoing works on the elevated section. It's down to 1 lane between junctions 2 and 1 for the next few days still, and it's slow on the approach from just past Heston Services. A40 busier than usual from Hanger Lane to Gypsy Corner, and onto the Jubilee line. Severe delays still Finchley Road to Stanmore after a train broke down earlier, and delays on the eastbound southeastern service out to Gillingham and Sittingbourne because of a problem with the signals. BBC Radio London, your next travel after the news at midday.
BBC Radio London.
The Late Show, Monday to Thursday, where every picture tells a story.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, I say.
That's like a
Lord.
That puts my Portuguese flat thing. I've got a hammer and a kettle in here, that's about it.
From the love of London
What people call stress, I call exhilaration. I get turned on by that
to
city.
the meaning of life.
We're using our time in the most exciting way.
Being on this programme, you mean?
And just about everything in between.
Don't ask me why I want to go monster trucking.
And I mean everything.
Have we just broken lots of BBC guidelines, Joe, by now?
The Late Show with me, Joe Good.
How powerful it is.
It's frenetic.
Monday to Thursday nights from 10.
BBC Radio London.
We're just talking about how green the borough is, the borough of Havering. It's unique in many, many ways. Not only wide open spaces, but actually in who runs it. We are meeting the leader. It's part of a series, and thank you very much again to Susanna Mendonça for this, because it allows us a kind of unique access to the people who make the decisions, how they got into politics, why they make the decisions, and what are some of the impediments to making the decisions they thought they would make before they came to office. Ray's here with me now. You don't mind if I call you Ray?
Absolutely.
I am prone to being overly.
No. That's how I like it to be.
Well, let's see when it gets a bit tougher, as it might do in this interview. Have all the people who were victims of the fire been rehoused?
We've rehoused them straight away. Some of it temporarily, but some of it will be permanent.
Well, I don't regard temporary housing as being rehoused. How many of them are still in temporary accommodation?
I think it's down to about half a dozen now.
Right. Yeah. So still a lot coming up to Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah. But so we're working on that all the time. And some people have made their own arrangements in terms of how they're going to be housed.
Is there a hold-up? Is there a hold-up?
No. The problem is that in terms of finding properties available to put people in. In fact, one of the properties near to where the fire originally started, they've been housed in a property that's only 2 or 3 doors away from where they were because the previous occupant moved out.
Right. So there are all sorts of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, take me for you ride a bike?
No, I don't, to be honest.
You don't ride a bike?
No.
You embarrass it. Last week we had...
The problem is, actually, I live in a small one-bedroom flat, so to actually put a bike...
You don't ride a bike in your flat, so I'm not having that, right? so you're talking about wide open spaces. You've just been boasting to me about it. So we could go rambling, or we could go for a ride. Why can't we go for a ride? I want to go for a ride.
If you want to go for a ride, I'll have to hire a bike for the day. But
can you ride? Just tell me you can ride.
No. Who can't ride? We know from a young kid. You know how to ride. Once you've ridden the bike once, you know how to do it.
Really?
Absolutely,
okay, we'll find out.
In fact, I think last time I rode a bike, actually, I was in Vietnam riding a bike.
So I did the marathon, and then the plan was the next charity thing we were going to do is you can't ride along because it's very, very long, but you can ride across Vietnam, can't you?
You can,
and it's apparently a lovely thing and a bonding experience.
Yeah,
I
didn't go that far from north to south. I did go north to south, but not on a bike.
It is one of the problems with rehousing people getting back to the fires, insurance, because that comes up a lot. I don't know. That's your former world, isn't it?
One or two of the people who lost their homes didn't have insurance, but we've supported people as the best we can. We've asked them, how can we best support you, and we've done our absolute utmost to make sure that happens.
It's not that kind of interview, but you're an insurance man, so you know how this works. And I've just filled in my insurance form, and goodness gracious me, the questions they ask and what they try to do, because I know, as far as I'm concerned, the insurance people are bad people because they're trying not to give me my money if something happens.
I was in pensions, so you'd be okay.
Well, when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister, right? So you know what happened with them then. Anyway, look, so what happens if there is a fire and you are not insured? What happens? So far as you're concerned as a council, how do you support that?
Well, effectively, that person's homeless because they don't. Obviously, the people who've lost their properties anyway, even if they got insurance, effectively become homeless. Yes. Although, of course, the insurance company within the policy will no doubt support people into temporary accommodation. But it's the people who haven't got any insurance. Then, obviously, effectively, they've got nothing. So the council would have to support them and house them. Because effectively they're homeless.
So how do you support them?
In what way?
I don't know. Tell me. My house is burnt down. I've lost my passport, all of my belongings. I don't know what to do. They're things that I have precious to me. I have nothing, and I'm sorry to tell you, I don't have any insurance. So take me from there.
Yeah. Well, it would depend on each individual person's circumstance. You know, some people have gone to stay with family and friends. That was the immediate thing they did, and if that's what they wanted to do, that's fine. If they didn't have anybody to stay with, we immediately supported them in hotels, and then obviously moving them to more permanent accommodation.
Right, so I'm here with the leader of Havering Council, and we're talking about all things Havering. Right, so we've done fires, we've done a little bit about moving around. Let's get into politics. So how do you come to be leader? Because you're not, or you used to be a member of the Conservative Party, if my notes are right, and they always are.
They are,
because Susanna does them. You used to be a member of the Conservative Party. How do you get to be leader as an independent? I don't know that there's any other borough in London that has a setup like you.
There isn't, no. And Havering is pretty unique in terms of a large number of resident association councillors. There are some areas in London where there is the odd independent councillor, but Havering's always had a very strong RA presence. You know, my association, the Hornchurch Resident Association, was first established in 1933. Older than me.
That doesn't mean it's had any impact. It's the first time in 25 years that we've had people represent the council that are not from Labour or the Conservative Party. This is a moment. So I'm interested in why
us? Okay.
Today I'm interested in you. You sound like Liz Truss. You've gone through different political parties, right? The premise here. And I don't know how it's turning out for her. Why did you leave the Conservatives, and why did you go into local politics?
I kind of fell into local politics. I didn't actually ever have a sort of time when I thought, I must get into local politics. I kind of just fell into it. In fact, I was in between jobs when I first got involved in politics to any great degree, and that was out sort of canvassing back in 2001 with Andrew Rosendale. And he got elected. He was one of the few Conservatives that did get elected in that election. And I started working for him. And then the following year, I stood as a councillor, Conservative councillor.
I know Andrew well. He put you off the Conservative Party, didn't he?
No, it's just that I didn't like some of the things that I saw within the Conservative Party, and I actually felt that I was more akin to the philosophy of the Residents Association, and I got on very well
what's the philosophy?
Well, the philosophy is that
so you have different philosophies.
Yeah, how I distinguish us is that we're more interested about what can we do for people
But isn't that why everybody? Because I always ask this question, and it's so fascinating for me, and I hope the listener, why my guest, the leader of one of our 33 boroughs, has decided to go to politics. And it is usually for something so local. The bins, the schools, the lights, the neighbourhood policing. So we all go into these things with good intentions, don't we?
Indeed, yeah, and as I say, I didn't really ever set out to become a councillor. I fell into politics. It wasn't something that was on my agenda to do, but I fell into it, and then I thought, actually, do you know what, I think I could make a difference going forward. And after a couple of years being a councillor, I thought, do you know what, one day I might be the leader of this council, although I did think it would be at the time being a Conservative leader, but obviously my philosophy didn't match what I believe the Conservative philosophy was locally, and I moved to the RAs, and I've been part of them ever since. And we have a very strong residents association, mainly because we get very involved with things. We're very engaged with our local community and our local area, and people see that we get things done. Even though we've been in opposition, they see that we're active in their area, get things done.
How are you with Dan White, the former leader? Is he still around?
He is still around. Don't see him very much these days. Yeah, I think now that he's not leader anymore.
Damien, sorry, I call him Dan. Damien,
yeah.
He came in. Interesting conversation. Very, very interesting. We'll have to do that over a drink. Talking over a drink. Where are we going for a drink?
Depends. If it's during the daytime, if I was going to take you anywhere.
In the daytime.
Well, there's two parts of Havering. There's the sort of daytime economy and the nighttime economy. Now, in the nighttime economy, I'd be taking you to somewhere in Hornchurch. We could have a nice meal there. There's the whole range of different places. And then on to the theatre.
No, you're not doing that. I know what you're doing. Don't give me that vague nonsense. Where are you taking me? Where are we going?
Well, as I say...
No, we're going to Hornchurch. Where? Tell me the name of the pub, club, bar, whatever. You got to name it.
Rainer.
Right, so we're going to Rainer.
We're going to Rainer, and then we can...
Why are we going to Rainer?
It's a predominantly Turkish type restaurant, and I love the food there. Chicken Beatty, that's the one I would recommend.
Chicken Beatty. Not chicken batty. No. Chicken Beatty.
Well, I may have pronounced it wrong.
No. You probably pronounced it.
And then we walk along to the theatre. We've got the Queen's Theatre just about 5 minutes walk away from that particular restaurant. So that's what we do in the evening. If it was the daytime, I'd take you to the Essex Wildlife Centre, and we can have a cup of coffee and a sandwich and look over the wide open fields.
You're taking me to see wildlife?
Yeah, you get a bit of wildlife in Havering. Yeah, and you can see the cows grazing whilst you're drinking your cappuccino.
So we're going to have a really exciting time, you and I, are we? No. In terms of how decisions are made, I mean, it's difficult today because the backdrop to our show is Liz Truss, also a person who is in a position. I think positions of leadership are challenging, right? Because I speak to leaders all the time. What's the thing that you thought? Because you would have wanted to be leader, but then in that position, you must have seen something that went, wow, goodness, it's probably more challenging than I thought. How have you found it?
I think the biggest challenge is the finance side of the council. I didn't think we'd be in a great position. I didn't think we'll be in such a bad position.
£70 million gap.
That's what we're looking to have to save in the next 4 years. And that's at a time when, of course, we've got rising inflation, cost of living crisis, all those kind of things. And also what I might call a lot of the low-hanging fruit that has been used as savings over the past number of years. That's now gone.
Help us. Part of this is, people in your constituency are listening, but also people in the rest of London want to hear. So we want to hear the challenges and the best of your part of town. Explain low-hanging fruit.
Well, in terms of low-hanging, those were some of the easier savings to make that you can cut out. We've now got to the point.
Leave the libraries alone.
Yeah, it's like
leave the libraries alone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I've told from all my. Leave libraries alone. I know they're the easy targets. Where are we going to go then? If we want to make you and I come on, I'm in your executive board and I'm part of your leadership team, and we are now because we've got challenge because I'm sure inflation is going to put that money up even more.
It is.
So how are we going to get get rid of £70 million deficit in 4 years? What have we got? What have we got to look at now?
Obviously, there'll be some things that we'll be doing differently. So, for example, our waste collection, we're looking now. At the moment, we have a sort of black sack arrangement, whereby you put out your rubbish in your black sack or orange sack.
And then the foxes coming out.
Well, that's the danger when people put them out overnight rather than in the morning. But what we're looking to potentially move to, and we're still working through the detail, is to move to a fortnightly collection. Although your food waste would still be collected.
You've got wide open spaces. The mice and the rats are going to come and eat. Where am I supposed to keep it in the week that you don't come and collect it?
What's changing also is that we're going to be moving to wheelie bins. Something that which many local authorities in London have already moved to, but we're probably one of the few that still work on the older sack spaces. But we'll be moving to alternate weeks.
Right. So hopefully the wheelie bin can take 2 weeks. You've got a family of 4 or 5. That wheelie bin, I mean, we've got one. We bought one.
Yeah.
And it gets filled up pretty quickly. What about our recycling? What do we like?
Yeah, they'll be the same. We'll have recycling in the same way.
How much is that going to save? We've got 70. We've only got a few minutes. We've got 70 million in 4 years. You're not going to change that with just.
One of what the advice that I've received is that would save us £650,000. I've actually asked for a breakdown of how that kind of saving will be generated with that kind of change, and I'm still waiting for that information. In fact,
how much would that say?
650,000.
So
that's what we can be saving.
69,350,000 to save.
Yeah, and there's
what else we got?
Yeah,
I know that you're looking at the hour parking. I've got to tell you, hour free parking. So in Wanstead, we've still got that, and it's lovely for the high street, I think, anyway, because you can pop in, pop out. Are you looking to get rid of that?
Well, one of the things that we are looking to do is, historically, we've always been a borough that's wanted at least half-hour free parking to support our local high streets.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, again, because of finances, that's not been possible to do that. We had it during the COVID period, but now that the COVID period's kind of effectively ended, we've had to wind that back. But one of the things, in fact, I was meeting with my cabinet colleague only the week before last with officers, and we've said, look, can you model for us having half-hour free parking in all of our town centres? Perhaps with the exception of Romford, because that can sustain itself on its own. But what would be the knock-on effect to the revenue?
What you're doing. We're playing around with this, and we don't have that kind of time. So please, I don't want to make this interview hard, but you've got £70 million of cuts to make over 4 years. It is impossible to do without real pain. What, in real terms, are the sorts of things that you're looking at?
Well, there'll have to be cuts to things like children's centres, which and we'll have to do things in different ways. At the moment, I guess we've always done things in a certain way. We're going to have to change the way we do things. We're going to have to have more. More
nurseries.
Yeah, more automation of processes.
What does automation of processes mean?
Well, having different systems. We haven't really invested in IT in the way that I think we should have invested over many years.
How does that save you money?
Because you then cut out and processes.
Cut out people.
Yeah, because you're automating things in many senses.
So you're going to lose.
But also,
I'm pressing you on this because I know it doesn't sound great, and I understand why politicians don't ever want to tell me this or London this. But I think they're going to be paying for. We might as well give people an indication, because I'm guessing that you're going to, with the type of councillor I can see that you are, you're going to take advice, consultation and the like. So we're looking at losing people from the council, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, in fact, even this year, before we took over, we were looking to eliminate 400 posts. Now, some of that will be posts that are currently vacant, that they were just being deleted. Others, we've asked people if they wanted to volunteer to go. So that's something, even this year, even before we took over, was already in the pipeline. So again, because your biggest cost in most organisations is staff. So in order to make some significant savings, you're going to have to reduce your numbers, and we will in the future be a much slimmed down council in terms of numbers of staff. And one of the ways of doing that is actually using your IT to the maximum to get the most efficient processes of work done with the least number of people.
Can you do it?
I think we can. We haven't, as I say, we haven't invested.
You sound like you're in Croydon territory. As you know, Croydon was the first borough. It never goes bankrupt because there were things that happened, but effectively, Croydon went bankrupt. You sound and look. I've had a just quick look at your numbers and where you can save and the efficiencies that have already been made. And it seems, as a layperson, that there is a danger that could happen to you.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. I believe that on the current trajectory, we could well be a bankrupt council in 4 years' time. Now, obviously, we have got one or two other things that we're working on, which may be our saviour. Obviously, because of the sensitive nature of it, I can't disclose at the moment. But we don't buy
a hotel.
No, it's not. It's
don't
not,
spend 30 million on a hotel.
It's not a hotel. I can assure you of that.
Okay.
But we do believe that it will generate a considerable amount of income for us. But as we're not over the line with it yet, then obviously we can't bank on it, which I think has been one of the problems with some of the councils. They've kind of banked on income coming in even before it's actually started coming in, and that's where you lead into those kind of problems.
You have to be an actuary. You have to be. Well, you know what actuaries are because you worked in insurance.
You
do have to be because you won't have factored in inflation. B, you won't, because it didn't happen till last night. Yesterday, you won't have factored in the fact that the new Chancellor has sent everybody around and all the departments to look for where they can make efficiencies. And the easy hit, which is why I love libraries, because that's the easy hit from your point of view, but the easy hit for central government is local government.
Yes, indeed it is. And it has been for many, many years, you know. Now, I guess the good thing for Havering is we can't go any lower in terms of the amount of money we receive from government. Our rate support grant is £1.5 million.
What did it used to be?
It used to be £70 million only in 2010. So in those 12 years, there's been a 98% reduction in our rate support grant. Now, if the Chancellor or or Simon Clark's listening today, I would urge them not to cut local government, because
what do you want them to cut? The NHS?
I think.
What do you want them to? Education?
I think we have to be honest with people, right? Honest with people in the sense that if you want good public services, you're going to have to pay for them through higher taxes. And I think we try to create this illusion that we can have everything we want and still have tax cuts and money in our pocket.
Yeah, but they do that. They do that locally and centrally, because inflation is making this a lot worse.
It is.
You know what I've learned in this last couple of years? We've gone through COVID, and it's how much individuals, communities working together to support each other almost lead the way.
Yeah.
You know, person to person, Londoner to Londoner. I ask you to consider that when you're doing it. What kind of community service can we in the borough of Havering carry out for each other? Because I think, you know, you're looking at me straight in my eye, and I can see, you know, you got tough times, Kelly.
Absolutely. We make no bones about that, and I will be open and honest with people in Havering and tell them exactly where we are as a council and the tough choices.
How bad could it get then?
Well, from the point of view, it can get that bad that we will eventually fall over as a council. You know, because at the end of the day, if your outgoings, and remember, the bulk of our services, 70% of what we spend in Havering is on adults and children's services. The majority of those are statutory services, so we have to provide them by law. Now, really what should be happening is the government should be supporting us to make sure that we can provide those services, which they oblige us to do by law, that we can fund them properly. But they haven't been. In fact, they're going the other way. 98% cut over those 12-year periods. So now, the residents of Havering, as the council taxpayers, 80% of our funds come from them. Very little now comes from elsewhere. The only other areas which we get money from, apart from a little smidgen of support from the government, will be through business rates and through other fees and charges that we charge people for using a range of services, like parking charges that you just indicated.
So they will really be dressed up as the cash cow that they are.
Well, we'll have to look at such a way that we support our local high streets, but equally it's an income generation.
As a residents' association, one would imagine that you have a special want, need, love for people to find somewhere to live. Where are we with homelessness?
homelessness is an increasing challenge in Havering. It's perhaps probably the growth area. In fact, probably the vast majority of the emails that I get from people and contact is people that are in that particular situation. The problem is that we don't have an abundance of properties just waiting there available for people just to move in.
Which is why you might have to consider building on some of that fantastic land that you have. Do you have the power to do
potentially? Well, that's one of the things we have to deal with in our local plan, because there are so.
That's the thing that's under consideration,
and it is. And in fact, only yesterday I was talking to the sort of head of planning about some of our sort of plans going forward, along with the cabinet member. I'd like to see us building. I'm not wedded personally to sort of the green belt, because you can build on that, but I still want those open spaces that people can live in. So for example, I said earlier about the former St George's Hospital site. We've got some flatted developments on there. We've got some houses on there, but there's lots of green space on there. There's lots of areas where kids can play and stuff. It's a nice development.
But it's a balance. But we're in extraordinary times. And I please don't think I imagine that you're in the local government association, so you're not the only borough faced with this. Just one more thing, because I'm fascinated, because I try to make it a thing to talk about the kind of green credentials of local authorities. The plan is that ULEZ will be extended next year. That's the plan. Mm-hmm. What say you to that? And how do you get on with the mayor of our great city?
Not met him yet. I would like to meet him, and in fact, I know.
How would ULEZ then, the expansion of ULEZ, affect residents in your part?
Well, certainly we were strongly against the expansion of ULEZ.
Is that you or the Conservatives?
Well, actually, myself and in fact, all groups. In fact, what I will say is it was cross-party that we were unhappy about the proposal to move the sort of ultra-low-emission zone out to the outer London boroughs.
Well, do you recognise that? Because that was, if I'm honest with you, that Sean Bailey and Sadiq Khan, when they came in for their leadership debate, which I hosted, that was where it got really, really nasty.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I think the thing is that inner London and outer London are very, very different in their nature.
Well, you don't have bad air in outer London.
And, well, from the point of view that, for example, our connections transport-wise are nowhere near like they are in many of the inner London boroughs. Geographically, we're a large London borough. In fact, I understand you can fit 3 inner London boroughs into Havering, because we're that big. The transport connections are poor. If you're going from east to west in Havering, not too bad. If you're in the north of the borough and you're going to the south of the borough, it's a very, very long journey, and you often have to get on 2 or 3 different buses to get there. So you've got to have the transport connections. If you want people out of their cars, you have to have the transport infrastructure. We haven't got that. In fact, a few weeks ago, I met Seb Dance, the Deputy Mayor for Transport, and was making that very point.
Well, we'll have to stay with that. Hopefully you've enjoyed it.
I have indeed.
It's been fantastic. Thank you so much
great to meet you.
for coming in. Appreciate it.
Okay.
On the BBC Sounds app, on your smart speaker,
Play BBC Radio London.
and on your radio.
The sound of London is BBC Radio London.